I am not the type to try and find excuses. The survey is damning. So I am not the kind of person to try and find comfort somewhere where there is a very strong message.
Dr. Adrian Delia, opposition leader, thank you for accepting this interview with Lovin Malta. It must be said that Joseph Muscat and his successor, Prime Minister Robert Abela, have been very interview shy with us, so it's nice to credit where credit's due. It's nice to get the transparency and access that is, I think, deserving of a constitutional role like yours. Let's start with this question. What would you say was your biggest achievement as PN leader so far?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to take this interview. I'm always available, not only for Lovin Malta, but for anybody in the media. My greatest achievement may be one of the things that happened recently, because I'm not one to actually really spend too much time on where I succeed, but concentrate more where I think I am failing. But I think I really was very satisfied and vindicated, if you wish, when we succeeded in winning the case against the Attorney General, which was the first, where we showed that the Attorney General in Malta, Avvocat Generali, was breaching the Constitution, was breaching the European Convention, breaching the human rights, the fundamental human rights of the leader of the opposition, a constitutional role.
So getting the e-grant report
and
published.
Succeeding in not only getting the report per se, because there are two facades to that achievement. One, actually having the Constitutional Court declare that the Attorney General was creating political imbalance. That was an issue in itself. And then, yes, getting the grant report, irrespective of what it contained.
Was it all it was cracked up to be, though, or?
I think there is much more to be discovered. And I think then one of my actions subsequent to the publication of the report, which I felt I had to do, was also, for example, the action that I took insofar as one of the recommendations that the acquiring magistrate had done with respect to call Chini of Nexiabiti. The government had done nothing. And therefore when I had gone myself to the Commissioner of Police in order to take the necessary proceedings, and it's very evident that this person was the person who knows till today, who the first owner, or the owner at that original point in time of e-grant was, and has not disclosed yet. So there's more to be delved into there, yes.
So you just registered a trust rating of 13.5%. Nationalist voters today trust you pretty much at the same level that they trust Labour's leader. This is unprecedented, and the situation seems to only be getting worse. Don't you think it's time you gave someone else a chance to do better?
First of all, the decision is not only mine, in which sense that the Nationalist Party does not belong to me. The Nationalist Party belongs to its members. So that's something that people need to understand. I give a lot of value to surveys. I certainly am obliged to weigh them, to study, to understand, to read the messages, but without forgetting also that there is another message that I have to heed, which is the message of the grassroots of the Nationalist Party, which were the ones who put me in this position, who elected me, that not always run hand in hand with what the surveys, the general public would have been deciding or
What is the message,
voting.
though, from the survey? What's causing this dismal
I
rating?
think that a lot of people want a lot of change across the board, and I think one thing that, and I'm not trying to be optimistic or trying to hide anything here, the survey also encourages one, because it came at an appropriate time, to change more and be more radical in the changes that we were contemplating, because, as you very well know, we are passing through a period of reform outdated within the PN. And I think the message that I get from that survey is that we need to change more drastically across the board, and therefore be encouraged to take bolder decisions. 1 week, 1 day is a long time in politics, that is true. But also, you need to understand that when you read surveys, you need to also understand trends and not particular surveys.
But the trend has been pretty negative since day one. You didn't even get a honeymoon period.
I am not the type to try and find excuses. The survey is damning. So I am not the kind of person to try and find comfort somewhere where there is a very strong message.
It would discourage most people from trying.
That is maybe something that doesn't happen to me, because and I have said this already, my instinct is not to see something which is or evidently should discourage and you just give up. My responsibility is to weigh everything. And yes, you weigh the survey. Yes, you have to also understand the message coming from the grassroots of the Nationalist Party, but looking forward, what the possibilities are, what the need to change and what is, and take the bold decisions at the right time, and I'm prepared to take them.
But let's speak about some specifics. I mean, since losing the MEP elections, were there any mistakes that you identified that you have since corrected?
It's not. I don't think it's a question of mistakes. It's a question of whether we've changed enough.
Have you?
No,
have you changed
we haven't.
anything?
And there, one needs to understand the mechanisms of the party. Ironically, I speak not only to media, I speak to people all the time, every day, and try to make it a point not to be closed within the parameters of our offices, whether it's Parliament or whether it's the headquarters of our party, but also be open to speaking to people in a very informal manner so that they are comfortable giving you their own opinions and ideas. There are those who think I did not change enough. There are those who think that I did not retain enough. So it's not easy sometimes to say the problem is you. The problem is those around you.
Would it be that the problem is you,
It could be, certainly it could be. And that is not, I think, something that I need to decide myself, but I certainly need to be very close to who brought me here. And I will not even make the argument myself. Listen, I was elected democratically, so I retain my seat, I retain
So what is the argument? Let's say there's a problem of chemistry between you and the electorate, because sometimes that happens, right? I mean, we had seen in history people like Alfred Sant and people like Carmenu Mifsud Bonici, they never really gelled with the electorate to any degree. Could it be that you have that problem?
I don't want to look back and judge people, and I don't think
Just
it's
to
fair.
give an example. I mean, I'm talking about chemistry here.
But
Sometimes
if
we
you
just don't
describe
appeal to the electorate.
If you describe the event of Alfred Sant, in the beginning they said that he was not electable, but he actually was electable and became Prime Minister. Sometimes it's a process that takes a number of years, because we need to understand that the Labour Party today is a massive force to reckon with after being basically 25 years in opposition. And again, I want to be clear, I'm not finding excuses.
Surely this crisis should have damaged the Labour Party to some degree. Instead, it strengthened it.
Let's try and explain that. If this crisis was all about corruption, and it was, should I understand that people want more corruption?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So how come that in a scenario where the main battle was corruption, the party which is in government, who is accused of being the most corrupt government ever, is strengthened?
Because
that is a question that, and again, it's not an excuse.
Abela is more credible to talk about corruption than you for some reason.
Which also begs the question, Robert Abela was the advisor of the most corrupt Prime Minister in our history. But that doesn't mean it exempts in any manner ourselves. So I do this because as a politician I also have to, and it is my duty to criticize government, to criticize the Labour Party in their doings, but not in defense of the first question you asked. There, our obligation is to see what we're doing wrong. So internally we need to go to the whole process, and that I will not decide alone, and we're going through a massive consultation process, and this survey will certainly give us more encouragement and fuel to be bold enough and courageous enough to change everything we need to change. But then also ask the questions of why the people out there would still favour a government which is corrupt.
Are you prepared to reckon though with the question, maybe you are the problem?
I ask that to myself every day with or without a survey.
And?
Every day. And the first day that I am convinced that I am not being part of the solution going forward, not individually, but through also the changes that I would be making, encouraging, inspiring, etc., I will always carry my responsibility. At this point in time, I have already answered this question. That is not the case.
In the past, there was this fear that maybe Labour could win an election by 2/3 majority. Today, that's becoming more and more of a possibility. Isn't it too dangerous to wait for the changes to take place?
We're not waiting. The changes that we need to do will be done in the shortest, but without being affrettato, without being too much in a hurry to not be able to react or knee-jerk or in panic, but do things in the right way. It is certainly a consideration that everybody needs to do, but even from the side of those who are out there judging and who we can attract to be part of the change and invite them to help.
Are you doing any succession planning in case you come to the conclusion or your party comes to the conclusion that you are part of the change?
No, I do not think that it works like that. Our obligation right now is to go through with all the changes that need to be done and finalize the reform and renovation that the party needs.
And are you seeing March as a deadline for
originally we had set a year, and originally it was June. I am soliciting everybody to actually bring that forward. Not now, we had actually taken that decision back in November, I think, and I think that we will be able to conclude in March, but it's not the specific date which counts, it's how bold and courageous we are to actually implement the change, get everybody on board, and make everybody understand that yes, there are a lot of ideas, but 100 ideas on their own will never make the change, but 100 ideas put together in cohesion, united, will certainly be a change that we made.
Is there a risk that the Prime Minister calls an election this year?
It's not a question of a risk, it's the prerogative that the Prime Minister...
Are you seeing it as a possibility though?
It's very difficult to assess. It is, yes, a possibility. It depends whether the Prime Minister is looking only at the interest of the Labour Party, his own interest, or also the interest of the country. I think a country needs stability. I think having a very strong Labour Party winning election after election with massive amounts of votes, but still not even making a full term, is new or strange for Malta. Usually we had governments who had much leaner, smaller majorities, who did full term after full term. We are assisting to something new in our country, where the strongest ever majorities are not even succeeded in keeping that party to do the full term. There is also a reason on that, and we need to understand why and what's happening, and whether there are those who are only interested in the strength of the party or their individual positions and roles, rather than the stability that our economy and country really and badly needs.
Can you name one policy that the Nationalist Party has formulated since you have been leading it?
Not only one policy, but various initiatives. If I mention the last 15 points that we put forward, took initiative insofar as the crisis that we were passing through.
But weren't those rehashed proposals from Simon Busuttil's era?
Only, they were feeding on those, bringing in new ideas and reacting to the situation in the country, but basically it's a blueprint to what our country needs at this point in time, and it was taken up basically by everybody in a very positive sense. And I do not recall even one entity or organization that found fault in that.
But it's been 3 years, surely there's been more policies.
I'm going back, that is one. In November, December, I think, there was our initiative with regards to declaring climate emergency. Environment for us is core of what we need in this country right now, because we are failing terribly, and it is something that we had pushed, discussed, proposed, and with the help of all the youths involved, and I need to give full credit to them too, then to went through.
You take a subject like a controversial subject like abortion, which is rearing its head in terms of national discussion. Would you consider sitting down the party and thrashing that out and developing a solid policy around an issue like that, as opposed to what the party did when issues like divorce and gay rights cropped up, you know, and the party got caught off guard in a big way?
It's not whether I will. I think the party has taken a very clear position on abortion. It is against abortion. We have declared that in no uncertain terms for not 1, 2, 3, but a myriad of times. The discussion was held within the party, and there is no dissenting voices within the party to make us rethink that policy.
There's no one within the party
yes,
who's suggesting a discussion?
We did have our internal discussions, and the position of the party is clear.
You were planning a shadow cabinet reshuffle. Yes. What happened to that?
I wasn't planning. I was asked, and I said, yes, that is a prerogative of mine, like the government obviously has his, and in this eventuality it was an obligation, not a prerogative, because it is a change in government, because the government technically changes with the change of Prime Minister, and I will be at the appropriate time also launching ours.
Coming weeks, months, days?
It's not a question of weeks or days, it's a question of the message that we give through the repositioning that we actually put forward.
One of your MPs, Christy De Bono, this week admitted to basically being paid for a full-time job and not really going into work much. She said, you know, the government doesn't really give her any work to do, and she's a government worker essentially. Isn't that a bit of a ridiculous situation? Isn't that the kind of attitude and example that your party shouldn't be leading by?
I think that there is a massive issue that needs to be tackled, which is we need to decide as a country whether we want full-time or part-time parliamentarians.
Your position on that?
I think that we cannot go on as is, because you have a situation where you have the government ministers, including the backbench, which basically are either full-timers being paid as full-timers or giving consultancies. And then the opposition being dilapidated because of the fact that they are part-timers. So from the opposition bench, basically everybody has his job to earn a living. But even those who don't are either lawyers or architects or doctors. So the balance which the opposition can counteract government in anything is totally disproportionate. So we need to have a parliament which is truly autonomous and independent, because the way that it is acting right now, where you have the government backbench, which is basically given consultancies of substantial amounts, does act as an impediment to the government opposition in itself, which it should be, but also not giving enough strength to an opposition to have the resources. Only a few days ago, there was a discussion in Parliament, and we started off at least with the resources of the leader of the opposition. What balance is there? That you have the Prime Minister who has, just for numerical examples, staff of 50 paid by government, and the opposition has a staff of 1 who happens to be a driver. So this balance and disproportionate there is militating against the opposition being able to deliver to its best of abilities the best possible opposition.
Obviously this was the case when Labour was in opposition as well.
And the fact that it was wrong there doesn't make it right now.
Are you managing to attract new people?
We have passed through a very sad experience in the last few years, and irrespective of surveys and popularity and politics, I think we went and really over the red line to an extreme that it was not politics any longer, but criminality invading politics. And that is sad, that we had a system where it is now evident that there was a web of criminality which entered into a political party to then take control of a country and use and abuse of politics, of people, of a country and its resources for criminal intent, going to extremes of assassinating journalists and covering up and distorting legal proceedings, I think is an extreme which is beyond the realm of politics. We need to ascertain, we need to work hard, we need to do everything possible to avoid that ever happening again. And to do that, we need to find new people, we need to invite, we need to be open, we need to speak to as many people as possible, and it's not easy. Being in politics is not easy, it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice which very few people want to do, because if you really want to do politics the right way, you give up everything, you lose everything, and you do not get credit for basically anything, but get slack for most things. So to do all this simply because you believe in something, simply because you have a passion for your country and a love for who you are and who made you what you are, is not an easy choice for a lot of people, I think.
This week we had a horrific murder of domestic violence murder. Do you think there is something wrong with our culture that is leading to such incidents?
I commented about that this morning. It's very difficult to make a scathing, in a few minutes, analysis of a societal disposition, but I think we need to change a lot. Not only laws, but the way we look at and the way we treat females. Yes, there is still prejudice, still dispositions which are unacceptable in today's world. There is still an attitude that children of Allah are good, but I don't want to generalize because it would be very unfair to a lot of people who do a lot of good so I want to be very careful there. But certainly, and I don't want to use this as an example either, I think we're far away from having, because it's easy to talk about equality, it's easy to say that we've put in pieces of legislation that are putting men, women, anyone with any...
It's quite a complex issue. I mean, like I don't want to go into any personal matters, but you yourself experienced being accused of domestic violence in your private cases, eh? So it's
that is in my mind not an issue that I will discuss, because I am obliged at law not to do that. But as a fact, there is still a lot in our society that needs to be done to not only have pieces of legislation, but also have respect, also have the understanding that every person, irrespective of age, creed, gender, whatever you want, is truly appreciated as a human being. And we are a people of prejudice. We are a people of tribes, even in feasts. We do not only see the good of our own, but seem to concentrate on creating the antagonisms in whether it's sport, whether it's religion, whether it's what have you.
I just have a few last questions. First of all, Robert Abela has been Prime Minister for a few weeks now. What's your general assessment of him? The public seems to like him tremendously so far.
I'm very disappointed that when he had been asked whether he wants to debate me, he had said yes, even tomorrow, but now I am informed that the scheduled program for Friday, I had immediately accepted the invitation. It seems that he declined.
Charabanc debate?
Correct. And that's, again, I'm very happy to discuss, to answer.
So you challenge him to a debate?
No, I don't use that word. They invited me and I accepted. It seems that he did not accept, which is sad. Because people need to understand and listen to arguments and listen to positions and then decide on their own.
Besides that, anything else?
First of all, I was very disappointed when he came to do his first speech in Parliament, which he didn't. So his maiden speech, which I was expecting to be a directional speech, was simply to inform us that the Minister for Gozo, which he had chosen days before, had given him his resignation. The issues regarding the Commissioner of Police, again, during his first few days, everybody had been saying that the resignation of Lawrence Cotire had been long overdue, but then again, when we came to then deciding upon a manner in which to choose the new commissioner, he said that what we were saying was not correct. But that was proved by every single legal expert that spoke not to be the case, so we were proven right, and still he persists.
Last question. I started by asking you what your greatest achievement was as PN leader. What do you think your biggest mistake has been?
My biggest mistakes, I've done so many. Let me see. I try to think that every day I do mistakes. And every day I try to learn from my mistakes. I also nearly never compare myself to somebody else, but compare myself to myself yesterday. Acknowledging mistakes, I think, is a constant of change and the need to evolve all the time. And a Chinese proverb says that the day you say that you know everything is the day you declare that you know nothing. I think one of my mistakes was the way I had tackled the issue of the e-grant issue with Simon Busuttil, and that had repercussions.
Asking him to step down?
It wasn't really asking him to step down. It was more complicated than that, and I don't want to reignite that discussion, but I think that wasn't the right thing at that time, or the way it was handled. Other particular mistakes is because there isn't a one.
Do you think that incident and the other things also that happened before she was killed, do you think that you reconciling with the faction of the Nationalist Party that is most active in terms of the calling for justice for Daphne Caruana Galizia, do you think that the damage there is irreparable, and that comes to a point where there is now a division in the party?
So when I spoke about mistakes, I spoke about mistakes from the day I was elected onwards. I never look at things as being irreparable. In my mind, I am doing all I can in the fight for justice. I am doing all I can in the fight against corruption, and I don't think there has been anybody who can identify one thing I could have done or should have done that I didn't. And if there is that one person, I have no problem with speaking, understanding, and if there is anything at all which I can continue doing, I've been doing that all my life, irrespective of politics. And I also must say that in respect to when I got into politics and the way I tackled journalists, and you know that, always was that I am always open, I am always prepared to discuss and to try and answer all the questions to the best of my ability, irrespective of the consequences then, because obviously I am here to be judged. But it is one thing that you don't agree with somebody, it's one thing that you sometimes do mistakes and overstep, but then it is another that you assault human life, you assault dignity, and you can always, and I have declared this over and over, I cannot agree with you, but I will fight till the end for your right to say it, irrespective of which idea, camp, or position you come from. But from my end, I do recognize my mistakes. I did ask once, twice, 3 times or offered an apology.
Apology to who?
For what I did. Not once or twice, various times, when they had asked me, particularly with respect to the comment that I had done.
The Bitcha blogger comment.
Which I regret, honestly, and I said that, and I will say it again. But obviously, at that point in time, the scenario was completely different, and that's not.
Do you feel that that's one of the things that continues to damage your ratings and make it almost impossible for you to regroup the
It's
PN?
not for me to but it could be, yes. With a sector of the population, it could be. But I regret saying it more for the hurt rather than for the popularity or lack of it. So if I had anybody, because I think Daphne was a very strong person, and the way she acted and reacted, I think at that point in time didn't particularly change the relationship that we had insofar as the scrutiny that she did, because it was her job to do. But I think it's something that hurts her family, and every time I have an occasion, and did, I will again ask for an apology.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.